episode number 25, the current review. My name is Thamsanqa Tu, sometimes known as TT, sometimes Chairman. And today, at this time, we delve into the political landscape of South Africa as it reaches, or as it readies for the highly anticipated elections on the 29th of May. With us is the national spokesperson of the African Transformation Movement, Mxolisi Makhubu, who will be sharing insights into the ATM's national campaign and its steadfast commitment to addressing crime and unemployment. Let's get right into it, Mr. Makhubu. Please share with our viewers what are the core principles in the ATM's agenda, and how does the party differentiate itself from the ANC and other parties in the opposition benches?
Mr. Tu, thank you so very much, and greetings to all of the viewers of the current view. We are very much blessed to be here today as the African Transformation Movement, and perhaps maybe before I even get into the argument that we are here to talk about, let me maybe shed some light. Contrary to popular belief or what is out there in the media, the past weekend, the African Transformation Movement was not necessarily launching the manifesto, but we were at a regional rally manifesto on the 1st of December in the BCCM. That's the Buffalo City Municipality Stadium in East London. I believe it was a 30,000 seater that was packed to the core. And this past weekend, we were at the Soweto Jabulani Amphitheater. And now it was packed to the core with all of the people and the hopefuls of ATM listening to the manifesto as it was unpacked by the president of the African Transformation Movement. But perhaps maybe if we delve into the point of differentiation of the ATM from all the other political parties, is the understanding and the ideology that we need to centralize all of the service delivery points to all of the people that have been locked out of the system. But not only that, but all of the endeavors of the ATM are based on a humanism, African-based humanism, and understanding that if we are able to give the people of South Africa a better life, then we can be able to enjoy better developmental state goals. That then means that the ending of load shedding as we know it, the betterment of education as we know it, the betterment of agriculture, and all of the other strongholds of the economy as we know it. Because if you actually think about it, the manifesto of the African Transformation Movement, we named it to be an economic manifesto, understanding that South Africa, even though it may be free in terms of a movement where we got freedom of movement, we did not necessarily get a freedom of economic liberty. So that's why the manifesto of the African Transformation Movement, in nature, it is economic.
And the ATM has been critical of the privatization of state functions. Could you expand on what an ATM-led government would implement to strengthen the role of the state in everyday life?
It's very important, Mr. Tu, to note that if we speak of infrastructure investment, we speak of a state capacity, or a state that has the capacity to actually maintain its own affairs. The African Transformation Movement does not believe in the privatization of any state business, which is now, we're talking whether from your Eskom to the water provisions to all of the other state businesses. It should not be that the state gives into the pressure of the private sector or the funders of specific political campaigns to say that now that you are, we have funded you for a specific campaign, you then need to give us back in whatever kickbacks that you possibly can be doing so. So we cannot be, as the African Transformation Movement, supportive of such initiatives, because we do believe that the state has all the capacity to be able to sort its people out. Because if you actually think about it, if we give over, for instance, outlets such as your Eskom, such as your SAA, it means that we're going to end up having to lock all the other people that are impoverished in nature out of the system, where prices are going to be exorbitant, where prices are not necessarily going to be encompassing of all of the living conditions of South Africa. You look at the Takatso deal that we were instrumental in stopping as the ATM, the Takatso SAA consortium deal. That's where now you see that, for instance, the state was not necessarily negotiating on fair grounds, where they did not even conduct a thorough check of all of the assets of the state versus the prices that needed to be paid. So in essence, you'd find that the taxpayer is now at the end of the sharp end of the stick, where we are ending up paying for all of the maladministration as well as the corruption that is happening. So that is the principles, those are the principles that the African Transformation Movement is not necessarily going to be supportive of. We need to have a transparent government that is going to be able to say that, based on us having a shortage of power and us having power stations that are not necessarily operating at a par and at a maximum control, then these are the measures that we are going to be employing. But over and above that, if we cannot be able to do so, these are the turnaround strategies that we're going to be employing, not the privatization of any state business. Because if we end up privatizing any of the state business, we might as well shut government down and actually admit that we have failed as a people to deliver governance for the people by the people.
And talking of energy, energy security is a significant concern for South Africans facing persistent power outages. What immediate steps does the ATM propose to mitigate the current situation and ensure an uninterrupted power supply if you were to take government?
Before we can even get into what immediate steps the ATM has as maybe points of mitigation as far as the energy crisis we are facing is concerned, we are of the firm belief that there is a lot of corruption that is happening, and there is no political will as far as the solving of all of the issues that are faced by South Africans as far as load shedding is concerned. So we want to invest in the maintenance and the servicing specifically of power stations, all power stations in South Africa. The expansion of all power stations must be the first priority, and the founding or the creation of other power stations to support the existing ones must also be a priority. But over and above that, you see the reserves of our coal, in fact, not even the reserves, the coal reserves that we have in the country were now taken to South Africa, but the main supply of the coal, the high quality coal, is being exported to other countries that are also telling us to ditch coal and go for greener energy. We are not necessarily against green energy as a country or as a party, which is ATM, but we are saying that the first parameters of our coal supply must start here at home, so that we can be able to have a longer standing, in fact, suspended load shedding schedules, because we have enough coal that is going to feed all of our power stations. But if we are able to then do that, we can be able to then move forward to say that the coal that is then a reserve can then be rechanneled or exported to other countries. But center to what we are saying is that the cancellation of all of the evergreen contracts must be one other priority that we focus on, because unfortunately, under the management of the evergreen contracts that the state has entered into, there is a dwindling supply of energy, and we cannot sit by and say that the oligopolies that have been running this country have failed and taken this country down on a downward spiral. So as the African Transformation Movement, those are the most immediate steps that we wish to take. But over and above that, we need to conduct a situational analysis of all of the power that is being supplied and all of the power that is being generated, so that we can see where the inefficiencies lie and be able to tackle them on.
The ATM has promised an increase in social grants and ensured quality healthcare for all. How does the party propose to finance these initiatives without burdening the state coffers?
It is very serious. It is very clear when Mr. Tu, if we speak of a public health system, you see now, for instance, we have just signed the NHI bill into legislation. and it is now going to be a going concern that we are implementing the NHI. And if you look at in the sub-Saharan sector or the sub-Saharan leg of the continent, you'd find that our public health system is not necessarily that bad. But what we need to start maintaining is the ability to be able to give consistent and quality public health. Now, we do have the funds as the state to be able to do that. That is why, for instance, we are able to give out medicine, we are able to give out public health here and there, but we need to then ensure that it is of high quality, and we employ all of the unemployed doctors. We ensure that the nurses that are put in the stations have also specialty skills that can be able to attend to whatever patients that they need to. But also the decentralization of all of the clinics, because you look at the local clinics in the localities have been taken to the national department, whereas they used to be a municipality issue. They need to be taken back to the municipality issue because to the municipality demarcation, because if we do that, we are able to solve the issues of the communities at a much rapid rate as compared to the escalation rates that are then taken to national. Because you go to communities such as your Harris Smith in Tabazwe, clinics in the localities or in the townships have been shut down. The people in the locality have to move to the clinics, for instance, that are situated in town, which is then overburdening the state and overburdening the system, which then creates a backlog. So we are saying, as the African Transformation Movement, accessibility is going to assist us in ensuring that we clear out all of the backlogs. But over and above that, you look at the rural areas such as Anduli, you look at the rural areas such as Botseseng and whatnot. We need to ensure that the ratio of medical practitioners to community dwellers is actually increased, because we do have this the capability to do so. Because you look at all of the budgets that are being rolled out in all of the different ministries and departments, and you look at the budget that is being rolled out on a national basis as far as the health ministry is concerned, it is not necessarily speaking to each other. Therefore, we must ensure that we have perimeters that are speaking to each other, specifically because health for us is a primary issue.
And on the topic of gender empowerment and economic inclusion, what are the ATM's plans to ensure women and previously marginalized groups are actively participating in the nation's economic growth?
The first and most undisputed strategy that needs to be employed is the redistribution of land. And by redistribution, I'm just making it a fancy word, but honestly speaking, that is the expropriation of land without compensation. That is exactly what we are calling for as the African Transformation Movement, so that that land can be then reformed towards economic activity. We are very staunch as the African Transformation Movement in saying that each and every activity that is now going to be channeled as far as all of the investment opportunities, in fact, by the PIC for that matter, need to stop being consumerism based, but they all need to be based on investment portfolio basis. You look at the fact that we do not have standing factories. We need to start having factories and revive the textile, for instance, the textile sector, so that we can be able to be producers of our own goods. What we eat, we produce. What we wear, we produce. We need to go back to that specific state so that we can be able to say that each and every person, specifically for the targeted groups, the minority groups, the women, and all other vulnerable groups, are able to be emancipated, because you look at the main sources of them staying in specific relationships that are not going to assist them in any way. And you find that it is because of economic issues. Now, if we are able to economically emancipate all of those people through the founding of such factories, through the creation of such agricultural cooperatives and programs, then we can be able to say that we create a supply chain by the state that is then going to say that each and every cooperative, in fact, the state must source over 50% of their business from all of these cooperatives, from all of these factories, and from all of these small businesses that are managed by small people, by small business owners that are of African descent, which is now Black people specifically, particularly, and all of the other people that have been previously marginalized. That is how we are going to change the economy, not with all of this rhetoric of starting imbizos of investment opportunities and calling all sorts of people. We start here at home, because the only way you feed the the macroeconomy is through the transformation of the macroeconomy, so that those economic pillars can actually give leeway to the creation of better economic pillars as far as the macroeconomy is concerned. So we are, as the African Transformation Movement, advocating specifically for the ring fencing of the microeconomy, much that it actually benefits us as locals, so that by the time we've got industrialization power, we can be able to say that we've got a bargaining power to enter into the macroeconomy and be global players. But we cannot be global players if we do not have economic power on the micro level.
And voter turnout is very important for any election success. How are you mobilizing potential voters, and especially given the sentiments around, the sentiments of voter apathy across the country? What are you guys doing to mobilize voters towards your objectives?
We are very much on the ground, Mr. Tu. If you saw, for instance, this past week, we were at the Jabulani Soweto Amphitheatre and we packed it to the core. And you'd find that that is only the Johannesburg region that had attended. The Tshwane regions were not necessarily there. The Ekurhuleni regions were not necessarily there. All the other regions, your Mohali City regions were not necessarily there. So what we are saying is that as a party, we are not just on the ground, but we are replicating the strategy that we have, which is a 10 by 10. Each person must bring at least 10 voters or 10 people that are going to be convincing other people to be voting for the African Transformation Movement. So basically, we are on the ground and we are making inways, and we are definitely going to ensure that we win this election by an outright majority. And I'm not specifically dreaming when I'm saying this, because the African Transformation Movement has been growing from stride to stride, and we are sure that we are definitely going to win these elections.
It's interesting when you say by an outright majority.
Exactly.
When the presence of the ATM is not visible in all provinces. What do you attribute that to?
That I believe is not necessarily true, because just last week, if I'm not mistaken, on the 21st of March, we were in Limpopo, and we also launched the very same, rally that we had in Jabulani Amphitheatre in Limpopo, your Sekhukhune regions, your Waterberg regions, and so forth. So we are all over the country, and we are all over the regions. And if you look at the decentralized strategy that we've taken, we've actually reached much more inroads as far as the regions, the rural regions are concerned. So you look at, for instance, our performance in 2019, we had about an odd 84,000 votes in the national elections. But you look at the votes that we got in the 2021 elections, it has grown three times as far as the 2019 number is concerned. So we are actually hopeful the fact that the growth trend that we are experiencing as the ATM is actually going to be maintained. And if anything, we are actually going to triple, if not quadruple the numbers that we have right now, to ensure that we actually get these elections, the 2024 elections, are concerned.
And I mean, in the Free State, I have not seen much of the posters of the ATM in the media that I consume, newspapers. I have not seen your adverts and so on. I've certainly not seen your adverts on Central News. Now this is me trying to drive a message that please do advertise there, so that our viewers and more viewers, will be able to consume your messages.
Just maybe if I can quickly come in that Free State kaloku kusekhaya for me. I am from the state, and just maybe last month, if I'm not mistaken, we had just spoken about an issue that was affecting children, students that where ISAT was using school days to campaign for the ANC and whatnot. And that is not work that we take for granted. We also spoke out on issues that happened in Kotsi municipality in the Vicksburg, where there was racial profiling of children and not to enter a specific high school, because you do know that the state has then since shut down the local schools or the township schools, high schools, and now all the children are forced to go to the town school as far as completing their studies are concerned. So we are also in the Free State. We've got, in fact, all the seats, we've got seats in all all of the municipalities. We are serving the people of the Free State. We've got Komalutia Pofu, we've got Kosetsoto, we've got Komangawu, we've got in Dihlabeng as well. We also have in Sasolburg. So we are definitely in the Free State, and we are servicing the people of the Free State. It's just that maybe we can speak of media presence, then we can definitely talk about advertising that they do. But what I'm trying to say is that we are all over as the African Transformation Movement.
Noted. And the ATM has quite on a number of times, emphasized the importance of ethical and consultative municipal governance. How will the party ensure that its elected officials remain accountable and dedicated to the people's interests?
You see, this party line business that is being run right now by many other political parties is something that we do not believe in as the African Transformation Movement. And we put our leaders and our representatives through rigorous testing and under a very strict microscope to say that you cannot be, as a person who is supposedly representing ethical standards, then be the one to break those ethical standards. Because unfortunately, South Africa does need ethical leadership. And we believe that as the African Transformation Movement, we should be the beacon of actually upholding all of those principles. That is why then we are saying that all of the leaders of the African Transformation Movement do not only account to the state or to the places that they've been deployed to, but on a quarterly basis, we account and we ensure that we conduct lifestyle audits, and we go through each and everything that possibly has to do with accounts and everything, so that we detect any material misstatements that have not necessarily reached us, so that we are able to say that if a person has broken the law in any case, in any way, then we chuck them out. It's as simple as that.
And given that now you are saying that you are going to win an outright majority, please outline for our viewers the most immediate changes that they would witness in the first 100 days of an ATM government.
The first part is the amendment of the Constitution, because this Constitution is not necessarily a reflection of the true aspirations of South Africans. We need to have a constitution that is a reflection of the people, for the people, by the people. For typical example, you cannot be in South Africa, be governed by Roman Dutch law, yet you look at the African law, it plays a somewhat minority role as far as Roman Dutch law is concerned. You go to specific areas where a certain law is administered. Kings and queens, monarchies do not have the ability to be able to conduct traditional houses or gatherings, to be able to give sentences and whatnot. If you remember what happened to Kumkanu Buyelekai and many other kings that have been jailed by the state, it's because they passed judgment according to how we're supposed to actually be conducting things. But because the Roman Dutch law, for instance, has been duped to be superior to African law, that's why we will find ourselves in these kinds of positions. So that's basically what we are going to be changing. And once we do that, we are going to actually ensure that the perimeters of this constitution actually give way for African people to thrive in this economy, because we believe that the systematic racism that has been put in place is not necessarily was not necessarily done away with in 1994, but it was entrenched in systems such as your constitution to ensure that Black people or people that have been previously disadvantaged continue to be disadvantaged by this current system.
So those are the things that we should await in the first 100 days of your government.
Definitely the ending of load shedding, the creation of more economic opportunities for young people, because we strongly believe in the creation, as I did mention before, the creation of factories that are then going to give the strongholds of this economy, such as now your textile industries, your manufacturing industries, your extraction, your minerals industries and whatnot. So basically, we are definitely going to be doing all of that, but also the reshaping of the health system to be a better a better health system that gives quality education, quality healthcare for our people. You go to the education sector, we are going to transform the education sector to be strongly aligned to all of the economic strongholds of this country, because what we've seen is that there is a huge gap of all of the students, for instance, that leave the education system, and they are not necessarily feeding the pool of job creation or employment opportunities. And it is because the skills that they acquired in university, for instance, are very far from what is needed by the market and what is needed by the country as far as stability is concerned, as far as the GDP is concerned. So we're going to definitely be transforming the education system, much that, for instance, I'm going to make a very typical example. You take a grade 5 student from South Africa versus a grade 5 student from India. The grade 5 student from India can be able to code, can be able to do all sorts of things, but yet the side, our child is still very much at a developmental state. So we need to be able to compete with our counterparts in the global sphere and be able to ensure that the education system that we have is giving way for our children to be competitive, but not only be competitive, but start at a very much young age to be givers as far as the economy is concerned.
And finally, what is your view on this morning's judgment outcome on the case between the IEC, the MK Party, and the ANC? And what does this mean for the democratic project of our country?
Look, as the African Transformation Movement, we released a statement together with the multi-party forum that we had, which is also inclusive of the MK Party. And this is the very same bullying that we faced in the year 2019 when we entered the elections for the very first time as the African Transformation Movement. If the ANC is very much threatened by the creation of a multi-party democratic state, then it means that it is not it knows and it acknowledges that it is not doing what it's supposed to be doing as far as giving service delivery to the people of South Africa. That is why they spend so much of their time trying to block and trying to increase entry requirements as far as new political parties are concerned. We are very much confident as the African Transformation Movement, for instance, that a multi-party democratic state is the one that is going to actually give service delivery to the people, because the one majority party situation that we currently have is not necessarily going to assist us, because you look at what is happening in Parliament right now. The ruling party, which is the ANC, protected Mr. Ramaphosa from accountability of all sorts of kind as far as the Palapalas issue is concerned. But if we had a coalition system which is created by a multi-party democratic system, then we would have been able to say that each and every person that is found to be guilty of any wrongdoing must then step aside and give way to the people that have an actual interest of ruling this country and giving the people of South Africa what they're supposed to be giving or to be getting, which is service delivery at the specific right time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Makhubu, Siyabulela kakhulu, and we wish you all the best in the upcoming days towards the elections.
Mr. Tu, thank you very much for having us, and greetings to all of your viewers. Thank you.
Thank you. That was Mr. Mxolisi Makhubu of the ATM, African Transformation Movement. Transformation Movement. And yeah, man, this has been a lovely day. We are out. We shall see you next week.